Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to begin this very important discussion around energy security, sustainability and independence. I'm waiting for Minister McGrath, who's just being mic'd up, and he'll give the keynote address, and then we'll have the various different speakers. And I think you'll have already noticed from your agenda who we've got. We've Commissioner Simson, with responsibility for energy, and we're looking forward to her thoughts and comments. Bouchez will deliver some opening remarks at a later stage. Georges-Louis Bouchez will also, Emma Wiesner is also with us. So we're just waiting for Minister McGrath, who I believe is on his way. Got a little bit delayed with the crowd as they left, who were following the various Prime Ministers who wanted to participate. So we'll just have Michael coming through now, and we can kick things off. I'm also delighted to see Pat Cox, former President of the European Parliament, with us today. So Pat, you're very welcome. Thank you for being with us. So in addition to listening to what the speakers have said, I'm really looking forward to hearing Commissioner Simson tell us about her trip to an Irish bog in the last 24 hours. So that'll be rather interesting to get your views on that, Commissioner. So Minister Michael McGrath, Minister for Public Expenditure, is now going to give the keynote address. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-President, and good afternoon, everyone. You're all very welcome to Dublin, in particular all of you who have travelled from Europe. I'm delighted to be here at this ALDE Congress and to have an opportunity to address what is such an important issue facing all of us on the continent at this time. I think it's fair to say that we stand at a crossroads. We are in the midst of what is perhaps the greatest crisis in global energy markets since the 1970s. Prices to consumers for fuel, for electricity and for gas are reaching new highs across the continent. Indeed, it may be the case that energy prices across the EU will be elevated for the foreseeable future, with all the intended consequences for our people and for the competitiveness of our industries. At the same time, our greenhouse gas emissions are rebounding from the lows experienced during the COVID crisis, and each of us have ambitious climate targets for 2030, targets that will be an enormous challenge to reach. But we simply must make progress. Climate change is widespread, rapid, and intensifying, and the consequences, if we fail to arrest this, are simply terrifying. If there is one silver lining to this, it is that there is broad agreement on the solutions to the crisis. We need to reduce our dependence on energy imports, particularly from Russia, by becoming more efficient in how we use energy, and especially by accelerating the shift to renewable energy across the continent. Of course, this is easier said than done. The capital required to achieve this will be immense. We need solutions that mobilize private capital at scale to deliver the renewable electricity deployment that we need. But we also need solutions that can drive investment right down to the level of our small and medium businesses and indeed individual citizens. The solutions to unlocking this investment need to be market-based so that we can deliver the transition at the lowest economic cost to our societies and hence retain the confidence of our citizens. I believe that the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe has a key role to play here by pushing for the kind of market-based solutions that can achieve this. And I know that Commissioner Simpson's Repower EU plan has these principles embedded in its heart, and I look forward to listening to her again in a few moments' time. Another critical part of Europe's green transition is the Recovery and Resilience Facility. In July of 2020, the European Council, made up of the heads of state and government of each of the EU member states, adopted a historic €750 billion recovery package for Europe. This package, Next Generation EU, is Europe's shared response to the public health and economic and social crisis caused by COVID-19. Next Generation EU is an ambitious and common recovery package that will complement and support each member state's own national response to the crisis. As part of this plan, Ireland will receive close to €1 billion, at least 37% of which must be spent on climate projects. Ireland has an ambitious set of projects that will help us to reach our climate targets. In my own city of Cork, for example, we will see the electrification of the Cork commuter rail. This will see the creation of a Cork suburban rail network using funding available from the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. Further money will be spent on initiatives to accelerate decarbonisation in the enterprise sector, to enhance the rehabilitation of peatlands and a public sector retrofit Pathfinder project. In total, over €500 million of the National Recovery and Resilience Plan allocation for Ireland will be spent on green projects. For our part in Ireland, we are committed to driving the twin paths of energy efficiency and renewable energy. Every euro invested in energy efficiency displaces imported fossil fuels with the creation of domestic sustainable employment and insulates us from disruptions to fossil fuel price shocks. Through the Climate Action Plan that we have adopted as a government, we have set ambitious climate targets. But unlike previous targets, accountability mechanisms are being put in place by way of sectoral carbon budgets. Coupled with this, last year we launched Ireland's National Development Plan. This is a €165 billion plan, which is the largest and greenest of its kind in the history of the Irish state. More public money than ever is being allocated to retrofitting, to public transport, and to sustainable living. And I'd like to give you a brief flavour of some of the main support schemes that we have introduced that may be of interest. I suspect, and I know I'm preaching to the converted here today, but I'm sure that the scale of opportunity on energy efficiency must be truly appreciated by everyone. The International Energy Agency and the European Commission have pointed out that in the EU alone, we waste enough oil to fill 120 supertankers and enough natural gas to heat almost 20 million homes. Even in Ireland, it is estimated that the efficiency steps already taken in the public sector are saving us almost €300 million in energy costs every year. This is almost €300 million more money available for the delivery of frontline public services in health, in education and childcare, for example. And we need to do more to persuade people of the opportunity that energy efficiency presents. It doesn't mean making do with less. It means living in a warmer, more comfortable and healthy home that is contributing to the preservation of the environment as well. In Ireland, the government is now making 80% grants available to householders for cost-effective measures that can make a real difference, like attic and cavity wall insulation. We've also introduced a new scheme that will cover fully half of the cost of much deeper renovations, like switching to a heat pump, for example. This is being implemented through one-stop shops that aim to make the renovation process as seamless as possible for households. To help households to make up the other half needed, the government will later this year introduce a subsidised loan scheme, which will be on top of the 50% grant available. Meanwhile, people in energy poverty, and we recognise this is an acute issue in the current inflationary environment, will be supported through energy efficiency upgrades that are free of charge to homeowners in poverty, while local authorities or councils will offer comparable schemes for social housing tenants. On renewable energy, Ireland is already number one in the world for the share of electricity demand met by onshore wind. 39% of all electricity generated in Ireland so far this year has come from wind. This is reducing our CO2 emissions and, of course, cutting our fossil fuel import bills. By 2030, we aim to meet 80% of Irish electricity needs from renewable sources. We will reach this target by continuing the development of onshore wind, diversifying into solar electricity, but especially by promoting the development of offshore wind. With a sea area of 490,000 square kilometres, approximately 7 times the size of our landmass, Ireland has one of the best offshore renewable energy resources in the world. To enable this, the government has updated our planning code with the passing of the Maritime Area Planning Act, and the establishment of the Maritime Area Regulatory Authority is at an advanced stage. At least 3 offshore renewable energy auctions are planned for this decade, with the intention that the first will launch at the end of this year. To ensure that we bring people with us, all offshore wind energy developments will be required to make contributions to community benefit funds. These funds will be properly regulated and managed for the benefit of local communities. And I do want to pay tribute to our co-president, Timmy Dooley, for his outstanding work in Parliament and indeed within our own political party for promoting the benefits and the immense potential of offshore wind. We are also introducing complementary micro regeneration schemes so that the benefits of renewable electricity can be broadly distributed. Individual households, farms, local businesses and community enterprises, including sports clubs and community halls, will all be eligible for support in a scheme that aims to install 1 million solar panels on at least 70,000 buildings. I think it's important to conclude on the centrality of this point. Fast-forwarding the green transition and putting energy efficiency and renewable energy at the heart of this is the best insurance for the security of our energy supplies, to protect us from the price shocks inherent to fossil fuels and to break the dependency on Russian fossil fuels. But for any of this to be a success, we must bring people with us. We need to balance investment into root causes of our high prices with immediate supports for our people. As such, the Irish Government has implemented a range of supports so far this year worth some €2.4 billion to address the immediate consequences of increased energy costs, including a universal energy credit, significant excise cuts, cuts to VAT tax, and more targeted measures for those most in need, in particular those on the fuel allowance scheme in our social welfare code. So I'm delighted to have had the opportunity just to set out in summary some of the key actions that we're taking in the Irish Government to tackle climate action, to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, and we look forward to playing a positive and a leading role in the European Union's efforts now to enhance the use of renewable energy and reduce our dependence on fossil fuels as quickly as we possibly can. Thank you all very much, and I look forward now to the panel debate.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michael. We really appreciate your remarks, and it's not often that you have a minister with responsibility for public expenditure being as proactive about setting aside funding to support that transition to a greener economy. So we're really thankful for the work that you are doing, Michael, and for the way in which you have embraced the role and the importance of the matter. I'm now going to call on Commissioner Kadri Simson, Commissioner with responsibility for energy, to give us some opening remarks, if you would please. We're really thankful to you for being in Dublin and being here at the ALDE Congress. Every commissionership is busy. There's a lot going on in every particular directorate, but I think yours more than any at the moment is one which is carrying a huge burden as a result of the war in Ukraine, the demands from the Council and wider society to transition away from the dependence on the fossil fuel market in Russia places an extreme burden on you. So I'm really thankful for you being with us today. So maybe some opening remarks, please.
Thank you, and I'm very excited to be here, and I actually managed to combine necessary things with pleasant things. So this is already my second day here in Ireland, and I had a chance to visit also the Midlands and see what has happened with a landscape that for decades was source for peat, and now we are producing their green electricity and hopefully very soon also green hydrogen. So very promising developments in this regard. Well, you most probably have noticed that European Commission has been very productive. When we entered to our office, then one of our flagship initiatives was Green Deal. And it was all about achieving the decarbonization goals, but not only that, it was also our growth strategy. Because the matter of fact was that before the war, last year, year before that, European 27, we paid approximately 300 billion annually to pay for gas, oil, coal imports. And this is obvious that if we are successful, if we will replace these imports with homegrown renewables, then it impacts our trade balance. But we also hold global leadership in some technological solutions. So, for example, offshore wind, if offshore wind parks are built, they are most likely built by our companies. So this was our growth strategy. But besides decarbonization goals, there are other considerations at energy policy too. Right now we are witnessing the impact of very volatile fossil fuels and very volatile price trends. So we have to take care of the impact of our enterprises and households. Commission has provided guidance to member states what they can do to support retail consumers, and you can expect that this is a work ongoing, what we can do at EU level to achieve more affordable prices. I personally do see that one of the, well, unsung stories is energy savings. In Brussels, we call it energy efficiency because we do not want to halt our economical growth. We do not want to send our companies somewhere behind our borders, but we just want that we will continue our economical growth in the way that we use energy more efficiently. And this was a very important part of last year's Fit for 55 proposal, that we have to save where we can. And there are sectors where we have not done so. So everybody knows that, well, the transport sector still emits year by year more CO2 than in previous years. But housing sector is also very promising in this regard. And then now the hot topic is security of supply, because we are dependent on imported fossil fuels. And we have to be prepared. We have ourselves made decisions via entering sanctions against Russia. 6 sets of sanctions already. First of them targeted Russia's ability to buy technology that they do need for refineries and producing oil. 5th set of sanctions covered coal imports, and the last one covered oil. On natural gas, we presented Repower EU plan that helps us to replace by the end of this year 2/3 of imports, mainly by replacing natural gas with renewables where we can. We will promote, for example, rooftop solar. There will be obligation for newly built buildings to install solar panels on rooftops. We will replace Russian natural gas with alternative suppliers, and we will negotiate on behalf of member states who will mandate us to do so, so that we will get better price for contracts. And then, of course, we have to promote savings, because there is not just enough gas available to replace Russian gas right now. And I think that we will not achieve that without national governments helping us, and we will not definitely achieve that without public acceptance. So one of the key proposals to get rid of Russian gas and other imports is accelerating our renewables. And you all know that there is a problem of acceptance. So we propose that we should regard renewable energy production as overriding public interest. And we should significantly shorten permitting processes. And that means, of course, that the project promoters, they have to do their utmost so that the local communities will feel ownership. But unless we will manage to fasten the renewable projects, then the deadline as soon as possible to get rid of Russian imports is too far away. So these are my introductory remarks,
Yes.
and I hope that we will have
Thank
a
you very
chance
much.
to,
Yes,
also a discussion.
It was excellent, and thank you very much for that. Next up, I'm going to ask Emma Wiesner, an MEP from Centre Party and a member of the Committee on Environment, Public Health and Food Safety, for your opening remarks, please.
Hi, first of all, nice to see you. This is my first ALDE Congress. I'm one of your newest and the youngest MEP in the European Parliament in the Liberal family, and I just entered 1.5 years ago. I'm in the Environment Committee, I'm in the Energy Committee, I'm in Fisheries and Agriculture, so I used to say I'm in the Green Committees. I'm an energy engineer, so I say I'm the youngest, but I'm also the nerdiest, so I compensate. And the energy is one of my absolute favorite topics. But in this spring, I also had the honor of negotiating the emission trading scheme on behalf of the Renew Europe group, on behalf of the Liberal family. And that's been a major challenge, but also a very honorable mission that I've been on. So I just want to start by kicking off that I'm so sick of hearing we need to do more for the future generations. I'm retiring 2060. So when the 2050 targets are to be met, I'm still working. So, I mean, there's no future generation. It's my generation that we're talking about. And being then part of Fit for 55 and the climate package, I think it's been an amazing journey, and I'm really, really proud of what we achieved there, that the Commission presented Fit for 55 package 1 year ago, and that we in the Parliament endorsed and embraced that, making it more ambitious. And we're voting on that Tuesday and Wednesday next week. And I know that several colleagues in the audience will be relieved as soon as we are done. It's a big package. So coming from Fit for 55, I mean, climate is what we need to do. But the climate issue is an energy issue. And the energy issue is a security issue. And this has become very evident throughout the past year. But it's also not a new issue. In my campaign, when I campaigned for the European election in 2019, I said we need to make the energy union sexy again, because no one was talking about the energy union. But working together in the field of energy is really what we need to do. And this is a strategy from 2015, really making sure that we're putting energy in the center of the climate debate. But that's also the answer to the security and defense debate, or the energy security debate that we're in at the moment. So we really need to start talking once again about the energy union, talk about cooperating in the field of energy, and we really need to do it jointly together within the EU. And then that takes me to the Repower EU. And now I'm going to be a little bit frank and also maybe disrupt this cozy atmosphere that's been all morning, because I'm not super happy with the Repower EU. And I think that we are in the middle of a self-destructive way of doing things. I mean, this is a self-destructive way of acting when we keep spending billions of euros into the fossil energy infrastructure and the fossil energy mix. The threat from Russia is nothing new. When Russia annexated Crimea in 2014, the energy union strategy was sort of the answer to that. The previous commission worked on the energy union strategy. And there, the mission was clear. We need to reduce our dependency on Russian gas and oil. I mean, exactly the same situation where we find ourselves in. But what happened? Why did nothing change? And I think we really need to learn that lesson, to do our homework and reframe our gas policies. They are stranded. The gas policy of the European Union is stranded. The previous policies that we have for the past 6 years did not work. In 2015, we had 36% import Russian gas. 2021, that's 38%. And the total amount of gas increased. So we've put in billions of euros into the gas infrastructure, investing it in it, making it cheap. The infrastructure cost is low. And that made us use gas more, and it made us import more gas to the EU, but it also made us import more gas to the EU from Russia. And that's why I say that policy, the gas policy, has stranded. The energy union has not stranded, but we need to reframe the energy union. We need to start talking more about the electricity grid, the electricity infrastructure, and not the gas and oil networks. 10 billion of euros in the Repower EU is going to go to gas networks, 2 billion to oil infrastructure. So sorry, Kadri, for being harsh on the Commission, but I'm really disappointed here. This is our chance, spending euros in the renewables, in the Fit for 55, in the transition, and not in the oil and gas grids. So that, I think, is my opening remark, putting climate in the center, and we need to reframe and redo the energy union and make the energy union sexy again.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Emma. Really appreciate that. I'm now going to call Georges-Louis Bouchez, member of the Senate of Belgium and an MRR party leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you to be here. It's an honor for me to can speak in front of you. It's the first time for me too in the Congress for ALDE. And this question is totally the most important topic in a policy, because energy is the base of growth. Energy is the base of well-being. Energy is the base of our civilization. Without energy, you can come back in the Middle Age, no problem. So it is a strategic question. And I'm very disappointed that there is no European strategy about energy. There's sometimes some partnership between some countries about wind turbines, for example, or everybody speak about renewable, and it's really important. But at this moment, 100% of renewable is just a legend. It's not possible to have a mix about energy with 100% of renewable. It's important to keep an energy who can produce all days in whatever circumstance, whatever the weather, for example. And in that case, there is a big debate in my country, but in Europe too, about nuclear energy, because one of the questions is about the price of energy. I think it's important to have the best mixed in energy, and I'm totally agree, it's not acceptable that now we buy so much gas from Russia. But what is the other solution about gas? It's Qatar, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, or sometimes gas from United States, but you know, it's gaz de schiste in French. It's a procedure that we ban in Europe, so it's not a solution. There is no future for gas, there is no future for petroleum in Europe, and in that case, the only solution is a mix with nuclear and renewable. But it's important to have a strategy at the European level, because it is a lot of difference for renewable from a country than another. For example, my country, in Belgium, we have a lot of wind turbines in sea, in the front of the sea, like Netherlands, for example, like Portugal, but it's not possible for so much countries in other places in Europe. So it's important to have a network about electricity in all over Europe, to be more independent, to be totally independent. And it's a big advantage for United States today. The United States, it's totally independent in the energy point of view. And it's a difference when you speak with Putin, for example, if you are totally independent or if you depend from the gas of Russia. Is the reason why it's really important now to have a debate without ideological consideration about nuclear, because I know that some countries like Germany, like Austria, like Luxembourg, my friend Xavier is just the only one opposition with Xavier about nuclear. But no, it's not a question that if you love or not nuclear, it's a question of the reality. The reality is there is no gas in Europe. There is no petroleum in Belgium or in France. So the only solution to be independent is renewable and nuclear. It is really important to make this choice now, because about energy, when you take a decision, the realization of this decision is 20 years to become the reality. So it's important to decide very early to be ready, and just not only with goals. It's important to have a strategy and a roadmap to go to this goal. Just one word about the price. I think if with renewable, with nuclear, it's important to invest. And it's a question about the rules in the European Union about investment. What is the capacity of the states to be invested in energy, for example, for mobility? I think we have to have some reflection about this point. And more than that, and generally, I think if you want that the energy is a possibility for everyone, the most important thing is to reduce taxation. And I think that the people don't want check, don't want a lot of little helps, some amount like this and another one in other way. No, the people want just a salary, a decent salary for labor, for their labor, and the solution is to reduce taxation in the renewable, but more than that, reduce taxation on salaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to call, last but not least, my good friend Raoul Bouchez, member of the Dutch Parliament and member of D66, for his opening comments, please.
Thank you very much, Tim, and very good afternoon, everyone. It is also an honor for me to sit here in front of you and to actually talk about the biggest challenge we face right now, and that challenge is climate change, because we have had COVID, and that was a very big challenge for Europe when we stood up to that challenge. But we actually face much bigger challenges. And we are at a point in time where a number of crises come together. We have the aggression of Russia in Ukraine. We've had the climate crisis for a long time now, which we need to address. And I've said this before a number of times. I think Europe is a giant, an economic giant, a political giant that acts like a dwarf. And we should, and we see signs of that with the European Commission acting since 2019, that we are more and more stepping up to our game, but we are not doing enough. I worked in Brussels for 13 years, and it was one of the most interesting times in my career. I moved to the Netherlands and I became a member of the national parliament, and it's actually even more challenging and interesting. Why? Because in Europe we can set ambitious goals, we can come up with the best strategies, but they have to be implemented within the member states. They have to be implemented on a national level. They have to be implemented on the local level. We need to convince people to change the way they heat their houses. We need to convince people that they should use less energy. Because let's be honest, the cleanest energy is the energy we do not use. I think these figures will come out today in the Netherlands. We have used 33% less gas in comparison to a year ago, 25% in comparison to the year before. It's very important that we make that first step. I think any energy policy, any climate policy starts with using less energy. So that's the first step. I think the other step within Europe is working together, cooperation. A couple of weeks ago, we had the North Sea Summit on offshore wind. And what you see is 4 countries pulling forces together: Belgium, Denmark, Germany, and my country, the Netherlands, to massively invest in offshore wind. Because we will need all the clean energy sources we have in Europe. And we have them. We have the North Sea, my colleague just mentioned it. We also have in Southern Europe massive capacity for solar. Now, the challenge is, and my colleague on the right mentioned that as well, we will need a better energy grid to combine those renewable energy sources. But we can do that. What do we need? Massive investments, not in fossil, but in renewable. And we look upon the European Commission for that. Another thing I think we really need, and you will vote on that next week in Parliament, we need a source policy that is very ambitious. Our cars policy should be more ambitious than we are doing right now. So I call upon everyone who gets a chance to vote in the European Parliament to vote for the most ambitious amendments for cars emissions. I worked on cars policy in 2007 to 2011, and the funny thing is, it's when we started setting emissions norms. And the car industry told us, you will kill us. This will be the end of us if you set these ambitious targets. But we pulled through. In 2009, we had the first standards. And they were, if you look at them, it's a bit of a laugh if you look back at them right now. And nowadays, if you talk to the car industry, they say, this is what saves us. This is actually the setting ambitious targets sparked an innovation that will save the European car industry and will make us Europeans proud of being able to produce the cars that will drive in the future. And I think this is a Congress of liberal Europeans. I think this is exactly the liberal agenda, combating climate change and at the same time sparking innovation and being able to invest and to create new jobs, new opportunities. So I call upon everyone to set ambitious goals on a European level, but also on a national level, work to get these goals. And please, in the European Parliament next week, vote for the ambitious amendments. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Promise.
Thanks very much, Raoul. Now, we've a limited amount of time. We've got to be out of here in about 10 or 12 minutes because there's another session and there was a bit of an overrun with the Prime Ministers and the previous Commissioners, and we didn't think it was appropriate to try to hush them off the stage since they were settled. I see Eddie O'Connor in the audience, and there's a microphone in front of him, and I'm going to call on Eddie just to maybe respond from a perspective, somebody who started out their career as a public servant in the energy sector through various companies and then moved to the private sector, who I think is probably the preeminent expert in this country. I'm very pleased that he's with us today. So you might just respond and maybe pose a few questions, Eddie. So give you 5 minutes if that'd be okay.
Well, thank you. Hello? Hello?
Yeah. Can we get the mic live on the floor, please? Yeah.
Yeah, we're okay. Thank you very much indeed. Well, in Europe, as everybody has alluded to, we have two enormous free sources of energy, and that is the wind that flows particularly off this country, off our western coast and southern coast, also in the North Sea and in the Baltic. And we're blessed also with incredible radiation down around the Mediterranean basin. And although we have all the generation technologies to allow this to happen, we don't have actually any means of getting this power from where it can be generated with a free power source to where the people, 445 million people, will be able to consume it. And so I would like to re-echo what's been said by some of the speakers there, that what's missing here from all our thinking is kind of pan-European thinking. A pan-European energy crisis calls for a pan-European solution. And would Commissioner Kadri think in terms of building a supergrid, which would collect the power where it can be made very cheaply, and we have 12 metre a second speeds off the west coast of Ireland here, and very high speeds in the North Sea where we've already developed 4,000 megawatts, and so we know that we get 50% capacity factors there. This is a free source of fuel which would allow Europe to not spend the 300 billion per year which you've cited already, Commissioner. I reckon there's a payback period of between 9 and 12 years if we were to build the supergrid. and collect all that power and bring all the nations of Europe. It's very interesting that the most fast-moving commodity in the world is the slowest to be integrated in Europe. We all generate our own power and we sell it to ourselves. There is no way that Irish power can ever find its way into Hungary or Warsaw or Eastern Europe. And the supergrid would do that. And I think, just our costs for that are in the trillions, naturally. But when you have a short payback period of 9 to 12 years, it seems to me that this is where Europe should adopt a new philosophy. We're going to move the generation of electricity, the governance of it, the regulation of it, and the architecture of it from individual nations to the centre in Brussels, where it can be rationally done at the cheapest price. Thanks very much.
Thought-provoking as ever, Eddie, so thanks for that. I'm now going to go to Rudy for a quick question.
Rudy from FDP Germany. In Europe, we had an industry of production of solar panels. This has gone, and solar panels are now coming from China. Can we establish again industry of solar panels? And what is happening with electricity? If there is a shortage, there is night, there is no wind. How far are you actually in the storage methods and possibilities? It's quite difficult, and if you try to manage it with hydrogen production, it's extremely ineffective. How can you advance in this crucial question of storage of electricity?
Thanks, Rudy. To the mic on my left.
Oh, thank you. My name is Clement Groschel. I'm a member of the European Parliament, and I will do something that I usually don't do. I will defend the Commission, even though the Commissioner, remember, we had quite interesting negotiations last week about the gas storage and about the next forthcoming winter. The energy issue, it's not just the future, it's not just the super grids. It's a very simple question: will we have reductions next winter? And since we are democracies, we will need to respond to our voters why this happened. We had these negotiations about 80%, 90% of gas storage capacities. This is the reality we are facing tomorrow. This is one issue we need to address. It's true, the future is without fossil fuels, but I think we have a little bit more complex situation at the moment in Europe. We also need to look how energy prices are affecting our global competitiveness. We need to understand that our companies at the moment are fighting hard because they have problems in supply chains, with chips, with raw materials, and energy is just pushing additional pressure to them. So the question is, who will invest all the money on all these huge projects? This is a very reasonable question because companies are now fighting to survive in a certain extent. We have inflation, our citizens are paying quite high cost of energy. And this is also an issue which needs to be addressed not in 5 years, but in the next few months or weeks. And the last thing I would say that we need to understand something about infrastructure. We are all saying about massive investment. Remember something, there is an Iberian Peninsula and there is no interconnection between the rest of Europe. Why? Probably not because of technology. There are some other issues. If you're talking about having solar panels on every single house, okay, it's fine. But you know what's the end result? You need to get a help from your neighbor, which will allow you to develop the distributive electricity grid. Because our European distribution grids, electricity one, is underdeveloped. And this is the basic. Yeah. You don't have a solar panel without this. In my country, in Slovenia, this means 4 billion euros at least. The national budget is 10 billion euros. So we do not understand what is the scale of the investment, what is the scale of investment on EU level. So we need to have, I would say, a short-term solution for this gas issue, because gas is now still important source of energy for us. Okay. And what is the mid-term solution and long-term solution. And this is something that we will need to do together with the Commission, with the member states, because something is, when we are talking about in principles, And then we are going to the level of negotiations on the gas storage, and then there is a little bit less principles in that.
Okay, thank you very much. I know where I'm going for my next panel. I'm just going to get a quick response to those three, and maybe, Commissioner, you might deal with the question raised by Eddie O'Connor, and then I'll just move to Emma and just along like that, if that's okay. That was the issue about the supergrid, and then we'll be done by 3:30. I'm not going to have everybody respond to the same question, so I'm just going to ask you to respond to the first question, and then you maybe talk.
I will do my best, and
Yeah.
I will answer to all the questions. So
In
I hope
okay.
that next panel will give us additional hour.
Yeah, not going to happen.
Yes, but well, one of the first tasks in my office, it was back December 2019, was participating at the signing ceremony for Celtic Interconnector. You know that Ireland is not connected via cable to the rest of the European Union. And it was a positive news that last week, finally, all the necessary permits were granted. So this is just an example how long permitting processes are taking time, and we have to really do something in this regard. And I'm extremely thankful for members of European Parliament who have showed extreme constructiveness, because right now the way how we are negotiating the new proposals is really great. Well, a couple of nights negotiating gas storage, but still now we have in place legislation that member states have to be ready for next heating season. Right now the underground gas storage all across Europe is more full than it was a year ago. And Emma presented here very negative numbers, how dependent we are from Russian gas. Yes, indeed, last year, Russian gas represented 41% of pipeline gas, but this April it was only 28%. So indeed, even before any sanctions, member states are looking for alternatives, and it is easier for the ones who are having terminals so that they can replace pipeline gas with LNG. Even easier for the ones who are connected via pipeline with other gas-producing countries like Norway or Algeria or Azerbaijan. But this was also behind this proposal in REPowerEU that we told that we are opening a window of opportunity for some landlocked countries to build alternative pipelines so that they can agree on sanctions to get rid of all Russian oil imports. 2 billion from their own recovery funds, not new money, their own recovery funds, out of 219 billion, so less than 1% of financing needs that will help us to deliver REPowerEU plan. And we will prioritize renewables. Well, we have to prioritize energy savings. That means mainly retrofitting. And we saw that 28 billion we need for our electricity grids. Otherwise, we will not deliver in this sector. And I think that, well, we have witnessed success of single electricity market. The biggest positive, deliverable for all of us is that it delivers us electricity despite what is the current demand. This is not the case in the United States. They face blackouts. This was very different last winter in China, where they had cascading blackouts. Our well interconnected electricity market, and soon Ireland will be part of it, delivers us actually a very reliable system. And in the regions, in pricing regions where they do have more renewables, the prices are also more affordable for our final consumers. So I think that this is very important. And my final comment about nuclear, as you know, based on treaty, every member state can choose their energy mix. There are several ones who have announced that they are committed to become climate neutral with help of nuclear, and that's why the Commission doesn't have 100% renewable scenario, because member states do have the right to choose their energy sources. But we have a problem with 5 member states who are using VER type of nuclear power plants that can use only Russian nuclear fuel. Well, this is a problem. Yeah. And this is a challenge where we will help those five member states to get rid of that dependence.
Thanks, Commissioner. Emma, I'm
Yeah,
just going to bring Emma in, and then there are 3 people left, and I'm going to have my 2 friends on my right answer, or attempt to answer the 3 questions that are yet to be posed. Emma, please.
Yeah, but on your questions, I'm going to give 3 answers. So the first one, Clemens, on the role of gas. Of course, we have gas in this energy system today, and the next heating system will be extremely difficult. I think the joint purchase power, I mean, as we did with the vaccines, I mean, showing strength by purchasing gas together, coming as one big buyer instead of 27 different ones, I think that's the strength. That's how we can solve that issue without building ourselves into the fossil energy. Then comes the question on the supergrid that you called it. I don't think it was controversial at all. I have the map of the European electricity grid at my office. I see it every day. It's not a supergrid, but it is a really good grid. And that is what we should invest in. I mean, that's the future. And I think we need to spend all our money into that grid. I mean, really building a strong, smart, pan-European electricity grid. The last thing I did as an energy market consultant when I left that industry was a project where we looked at the different grid options. If member states started to coordinate electricity grid planning, not doing it one by one, but coordinatively. And that's exactly what the Commission have done, to look at, okay, but here is the map of Europe. How is this done in the smartest, most cost-effective way? If we think about this as a pan-European project and not individual member states. And I think that is the energy union. That is what we need to do, work with energy as a union. And then the third question was on storage capacity. Well, when I left the energy market industry, I went into the battery industry. So the past 2 years, I worked in the battery industry. And one really good advantage, what Jan is doing in the car file, because Jan is working heavily on the emission in cars, the car standards. When we're pushing the car industry to go electric, they will develop a battery industry at scale. And when we have a battery industry at scale, that also means that energy storage solutions for the electricity grid, the prices goes down. So when the car industry is electrified, that means we can much easier integrate storage into our electricity grids. And that's a bonus, sort of added bonus to the car industry's electrification. And that is also the question to the nuclear issue. I don't think we need to talk about individual power sources, but we need to talk about the electricity market design. How are we paid for the service that we're doing? When you connect a reliant source of supply in the grid, if it's a battery or a hydropower plant, or if it's a nuclear power plant, you need to look at the value that that energy source is creating, because that's how we lower cost also on electricity. Sorry, very engineering perspective on this.
I wish we had 2 hours, so there's now 4 people standing, so I'm just going to be very brief, questions rather than comments. Phil Binion,
yes,
please.
we should not forget the dependence on nitrogen fertilizers as well, which is connected with the dependence on gas. With Russia having a dominant position, and a lot of the nitrogen fertilizer also being produced by Russian gas. And this can be produced using synthetic hydrocarbons, but it needs masses of renewable electricity to do it. The answer is not to put less fertilizer on, but unfortunately, that is what we are doing as farmers now. We are putting on less fertilizer, we're going to produce less grain in the midst of a grain shortage. So this has to be taken account in as part of this question.
Thanks for the comment, Phil.
Thank you, Chair. I am relieved from my question earlier today that we're actually talking about energy and the environment in a serious way. I was most impressed by the fact that the comment was that the cheapest source of energy is that energy not used. And I think that's really important to spread that message throughout our governments right across Europe. It's a lot better to save energy rather than use too much of it. And this applies with cars as well. So my question really is, should we be moving towards batteries for cars, or should we be moving more towards public transport systems that avoid car use?
Thank you very much. Gentleman on the left.
Thank you, dear panelists. There were 3 concepts that I was very happy to hear in your discussion. The first was speeding up permitting and technological neutrality and market-based solutions. And this really portrays that we need ambitious goals, but also the whole toolbox of clean energy sources, from energy efficiency to solar, to hydro, to wind, and bioenergy and nuclear power. And the challenge moving forward with finalizing the Fit for 55 package and the Repower EU package is how to interlink these two, that the directives and the delegated acts do not become a hindrance with going to too much detail on what is green hydrogen, what is the sustainability criteria for forest-based bioenergy, and so on. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on how to combine these issues. Thank you.
Sven?
Two questions. First sentence from my side. I'm doing implementation of renewable energy pretty much every day. And so I'd like to bring you down from this top-level thing to a low-level issue. And this is very much often the liquidity situation of the private household that is simply not able to spend all that money that is required to import, to improve the percentage of renewables in their balance sheet. So how to deal with that is a very important question, because that's asking 500 million households in Europe how to do this, and they're often just unable because the liquidity situation is not there. Second question, we always talk, I mean, we're here in the liberal family, and to me, I'm getting a lot of concerns when I see all this centralized approach that we're trying to do here, because it fundamentally means that we are stabilizing the situation of big multi-billion-dollar companies, multi-billion euro companies, that would sustain their position and partly misuse their power towards those that are trying to implement on the local level. So I'm with the person from D66, I haven't understood your name, but I'm very much with you saying this is decentralizing as much as we can, but using centralized energy plans or delivering only as much as we have to. And that kind of balance to me is a little bit, well, it's out of balance to me as to this discussion. So my second question is how to mitigate the danger that big power energy supply companies are suppressing the democratization, how do you say this, democratizing the energy supply that private households, but also smaller companies could do by themselves.
Thanks, Sven. Now, Raoul, I'm going to ask you to contribute to that, and we'll finish with you, George, and then we'll bring the session to a close.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Complex questions, but if I kind of boil it down to one thing, I would say that the solution for the energy transition and for combating climate change should be sought for locally. We should, on a European level, set the targets, and I think the European Commission has a very important task in seeing through that member states do what they're supposed to do. I think that's a very important task on a European level, but the real solutions will happen on a local level. And I think on a local level you see both the issue of mobility, so the question about whether we just electrify all our mobility or we simply use less cars. I think there's no silver bullet in there. I think it will be both. In the Netherlands, we have made plans to massively invest in both public transport, but at the same time, we are subsidizing the uptake of electric cars. We're doing both. We're doing it from the European set and our own set climate goals. With regards to the democratization or versus big companies, again, in the Netherlands, what we are trying to do right now is to have from the government and controlled by parliament set policies and look at pricing, look at what households can bear, what subsidies we need to give households in order to save energy, to insulate their houses. You really need to look on the local level what people can actually afford and help them. I think that will be key for the coming decades, because people will have to do it. We're talking about it, we're setting the goals, but it's all the individual households. It's people, the way people heat their houses, the way they go to work, whether it's by bike or by train or by car. Those things will push us through in a green economy.
Fantastic. George, we'll take some concluding remarks from you, please.
Thank you very much. There is so much question, but Okay, I agree that for the translation of the strategy, the local level is a good level. But for production of electricity, I'm certain that it's a mistake. Because for some countries, it's not possible to have so much renewable. Because the geography is not the same, the time with sun is not the same. For example, solar in Ireland, I'm sorry for that, but there is no so much sun today. Wind in the center of the Europe is not the same if you have some sea. So it is important to have a new European strategy to production electricity, because in that case, it's possible to mitigate the danger, mitigate the risk, mitigate the advantage with the different countries. Is the reason why, I'm sorry, Madam the Commissioner, but I think it's not a good strategy to let the country choose the mix of electricity. Because with this kind of strategy is local and little solution all the time, but not a global view. And the situation is what? The situation is the choice of Germany today is a problem for all over Europe. And for example, if there is a problem with the Russian gas, what is the solution? There is no solution. Because if you change, for example, the country, you don't choose Russia, but you choose Qatar. You come with gas, for example, in port of Zeebrugge in Belgium. And after that, what is the solution to go with this gas in Germany? There is no solution because there is no pipeline. So for the moment, the problem of one country, one of the biggest countries of European Union, is a problem for all of us. Is the reason why it's important to have the same strategy. Because, for example, France take another strategy. So if all the Europe have the same strategy than France, the problem is not the European problem today. More than that, about the price. I listen that, okay, in the country with renewable energy is cost cheapest than the country without. Okay, but what is the situation of taxpayer? Because for the moment in Belgium, for example, renewable is cheapest because there is so much public investment. There is so much public help for industries, for citizens. Is the reason why it's important to invest at the European level, because the amounts are very, very important in a short time. Is the reason why it's important to have this capacity at the European level. Last things about storage, for example, or solar. I think this period is a big chance for European Union, because the challenge of energy is a possibility, a great possibility to have a new industrial strategy in Europe, to build storage solution, to build, for example, a strategy for hydrogen, to build a capacity to storage electricity. For example, and I talk about a European strategy, in my country, storage is very difficult because we have a solution with hydrogen, but we don't have any mountains. And the best way to storage energy is mountains. And for example, in my country, in the 70s, when we build nuclear units, we build an artificial waterfall to keep energy during some times. But this kind of problem become a solution at the European level. But in the national level, it stays just a problem. It's the reason why it's really important to keep the chance, to keep the opportunity of this moment to create together a European strategy of energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I'm just going to call on the Irish Minister for Public Expenditure, Michael McGrath, to just do a very quick wrap up, if you would.
Sure, thank you, Timmy, and just to thank all of our contributors on the panel, and indeed the excellent questions that were put by those in attendance as well. And I think we can all agree that the terrible war in Ukraine has brought a renewed sense of urgency to deal with this issue of energy security. The issue is there anyway, but we all accept it is absolutely immoral to continue to pay hundreds of billions of euros to the Russian regime knowing as we do that that is funding the appalling atrocities that they are perpetrating against the Ukrainian people. So we must address this with a renewed sense of urgency, and we must do this more quickly than we otherwise were going to do. And I think we have to have that fundamental shared objective in relation to the transition to renewable sources of energy, whatever the local mix is to be decided at a member state level. We do need the greatest possible level of coordination at a European Union level, so that if some member states have excess energy, that there is a seamless way of transmitting that surplus energy to other member states. And in the medium to long term, Ireland, given the natural assets we have in relation to wind, would see that as a strategic opportunity for our country. I think that's the final point that I would end on, is that we must see this as an opportunity as well. It is certainly a great challenge, and I think Rahul makes a very good point about bringing people with us, because people will look at this through the prism of what it means for them in their day-to-day life. If they are going to be paying more, then they will want governments and the European Union to assist them. But there are tremendous economic opportunities here as well in the green transition. It is the future of our collective European economy, green and digital, and we must do everything we possibly can to get there as quickly as possible.
So thank you very much, Michael. Thank you to the panelists. Really appreciate you being with us. Thank you to all of you who participated. And now I must end on a note of apology to the next group of people who we have retained outside for 15 minutes.
Yes.